Buongiorno ragazzi e benvenuti a Italiano 1. Welcome to our very first virtual lesson of Italian 1. Let's start off today's class with a proverb, as I typically like to do. Non dire gatto se non ce l'hai nel sacco, which literally means don't say cat unless you have it in the bag. In English, we could translate this, though, more accurately to don't count your chickens before they hatch. Although if we do translate it literally, it has a slightly different meaning. Okay, well, let's go on today's lesson. The present tense. And the present tense in Italian, there are three verb endings for present tense verbs. A-R-E or are, A-R-E or ere, I-R-E or ire. And the infinitive form of the verb is simply just the to form. To eat, to go, to learn, etc. Well, here's an example of a verb that's conjugated, imparo l'italiano. Imparo italiano, which comes from the infinitive imparare, can be interpreted to mean three things. I learn Italian, I am learning Italian, and I do learn Italian. I learn Italian as in what's happening now. I am learning Italian as in really what's happening now, almost a present progressive action. And I do learn Italian as in a response to a question. Do you learn Italian? Yes, I learn Italian. Impari l'italiano? Sì, imparo l'italiano. Alright, so what are the endings for ARE verbi and how are they pronounced? Well, we have io, o, tu, I, lui, lei, a, noi, iamo, voi, a te, e loro, hanno. Okay? So let's repeat them. O, I, a, iamo, a te, and hanno. Okay, very good. Okay. So something we want to know about present tense verbs is some present tense verbs, or some verbs in general actually, end in I-A-R-E, like mangiare, studiare. The important thing to note about these verbs is that when we spell them out in the to form, which ends in I, and in the noi form, which is iamo, we don't double up the i's in the spelling, even though we simply drop the A-R-E when we conjugate the verb. Well, we have a hanging I, and that I, we just don't double it up, okay? What else do we need to know about spelling with these verbs? Well, if we think back to our sounds, when we had the esame degli occhi at the beginning of the semester, we had ga, go, gu, g, j, gi, ge, all these different sounds. And when there was an aka paired with a g, it was a hard sound. When there wasn't an aka and we had an I or an E or an E or an A in Italian, E-A, I-E, these sounds are soft sounds, as in gelato, okay, was a soft sound. Ciao, using a C, is a soft sound. But we had C-H-I or chi-aka-E, it's chi. So what we need to remember is when we have a care verb, a verb that ends in care, or a verb that ends in gare, it's important to add an aka when we spell it out for the to form and the noi form. The example that I have is the verb dimenticare, which it means to forget. It sounds like demented, and someone who has dementia forgets things, so it should be easy to remember this one. And so this is one example. In the to form of dimenticare, if we don't have that aka, it would be dimentici. Then we want it to be dimentichi, to fall through with that sound that we have in the infinitive form. So your best guide will be to think of what's the infinitive form. It's dimenticare. And then when you spell it out, if you have to, put in an aka, and this will occur in the to form and in the noi form. Spiegare is the same thing. Spiegare in the io form, it's spiego. In the to form, it's spieghi. Well, if you don't have that aka in there when we spell it out, it would be pronounced spiegi. The same thing with the noi form, spieghiamo, but without the aka, it would be spiegiamo. So make sure that when you spell out these verbs, you include the aka in the to form and the noi form if it's a verb that ends in care or a verb that ends in gare. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is time. Telling time in Italian isn't too terribly difficult, and there are two expressions to ask what time it is. We can say, che ora è, what time is it? Or che ore sono, what time is it? I mean the same thing. The only difference is, because hours can be singular or plural, that's in 1 o'clock is a singular time, 2 o'clock is plural, you have more than 1 hour, and actually ora literally means hour. We have two ways of asking the time. Either way is fine. It doesn't have to be 1 o'clock to say che ora è, or 3 o'clock to say che ore sono. Okay, they're interchangeable. When we tell the time, however, there are a couple of things we do need to know as far as singular and plural. Well, with a time that's singular, 1 o'clock, noon, or midnight, these are all singular things, we use a. And that's even if we further differentiate, that's even if we further specify the time as being maybe 1:30, 1:15, we still use that a. With all other plural hours, we use sono, and we of course use the article as well. Sono le tre, it's 3 o'clock. Sono le 11, it's 11 o'clock. And to further break down the time to any of these, we can add a 5 and 5, or a 7 in the case if it were 7. E un quarto, which means a quarter or quarter past. E mezzo, half past. Meno plus any number, I guess less than 30. So meno 25 would be 25 till. Meno 10 would be 10 till. So meno means minus in Italian. Che ore sono? So looking at this chart, you guys can practice a lot on your own. But one thing I do want to point out is that Italians use a 24-hour clock. So when you're waiting for, let's say you're waiting for a train or a bus, you're looking at the schedule, one thing you want to be very aware of is that they might have the time listed as 1300, 1400, 1300 would be 1, 1400 would be 2, all the way up to 24, which would be 12 o'clock. Okay? Andiamo avanti. Okay, a che ora? So we have right now a couple different examples of time being used in sentences, and also when to specify something at a specific time occurs. So let's read through these examples. Quando ceniamo? When are we having dinner? Sono le 8 di sera. It's 8 o'clock at night. Ho fame, ho fame. This is how we do it in Italian. Okay. Mangio alle 7 di mattina. I eat at 7 o'clock in the morning. So to indicate whether it's morning or evening, you're seeing this as well on these examples. Di sera, evening. Di mattina, morning. Di or del pomeriggio, afternoon. So the next example is pranzi sempre alle 2 di pomeriggio, or del pomeriggio. You always have lunch at 2 in the afternoon. Marco studia all'1 di notte. Marco studies at 1 di notte means at night. This could be wee hours in the morning or very late at night. And then to indicate when something occurs at a specific time, we use the preposition a, which means at. A mezzogiorno, at noon. A mezzanotte, at midnight. Al, a, apostrofo to indicate at 1. And alle plus any plural hour. Alle 2, alle 3, alle 4. Okay? So a to indicate at a certain time. And in our previous slide, we talked about sono le, or e, plus a certain time. We don't use the preposition a when we're telling what time it is. All we need is the verb, the article, and the hour. But when we want to indicate at a time, we use the preposition a, which means at. Okay, next we have a little bit more on prepositions. We're going to get into prepositions in this part of the book and part of the course. And what's important to know about prepositions is oftentimes they're used to mean at or in a certain place. And generally we use prepositions combined with articles. In fact, in Italian, we almost always use an article. But certain places don't use them. They use just a plain old preposition, that a or in specifically. Okay, so here's a list of them. And you want to make sure you're aware of these prepositions. This is something you want to study and memorize. Okay, and that's it. That concludes the presentation for the day. Ci vediamo alla prossima.